All right. Well, between myself and the co-host, I think that we will continue to let everybody in. We have some incredible guests here this evening who will be talking about this monumental bill. We also have our policy fellow, Sarah, who's going to be supporting us with tech and getting the slides moving. So thanks, y'all, for being here. Maybe I can just start with introducing the panelists that we have here this evening. My name is Taina Vargas. I'm the Executive Director of Initiate Justice, one of the organizations co-sponsoring the bill. In a moment, we'll hear from AB 1509 author, Assembly Member Alex Lee, who unfortunately wasn't able to join live because the public safety hearing is going over. So, folks we gotta make
Going
sure.
over the bill?
No, different
Going
bill.
over this bill? Oh, okay.
Different bill. And Gina was also not able to join us, but we have Felicia Gomez from SE Justice Group, who will be speaking on behalf of SE, another one of the co-sponsors. And then, of course, Adnan Khan, the Executive Director of Restore Justice. But yeah, Sarah, why don't we go ahead and get started? Okay, so just to start with a little bit of housekeeping, this is our participation guide. We're going to be asking folks to use the chat to submit questions with other attendees. So because there are so many folks on here, it's just easier if you submit the questions in the chat instead of unmuting yourself, because that'll just be like too many things happening at the same time. Attendees, we're going to ask y'all to stay on mute for the duration of the webinar. So please try to be mindful of staying on mute. And yes, the town hall is being recorded, and we can send it out to all attendees and with additional resources related to AB 1509. Once the session is over, we'll get it sent out by the end of the week. Sarah, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so here is our agenda for this evening. We're going to open up with some introductory remarks from Assembly Member Alex Lee. And then our panel here will take some time to go over AB 1509, the Anti-Racism Sentencing Reform Act. So we'll talk through the details of the bill for folks who still have questions about how the bill works. Then we will have a panel exploring the impacts of gun enhancements in California. So we'll be hearing from Ms. Alice Coleman, who is an SE Justice Group sister who has a loved one impacted by sentencing enhancements. We'll hear from Xavier Espana from Silicon Valley Debug, who's formerly incarcerated. And then we will hear from an Initiate Justice member, Jasper Stallings, who is currently incarcerated. And we have a recorded message from him that we're going to be playing for y'all. Then Adnan will walk us through how to take action on supporting AB 1509, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions during the presentation, jot them down. We will have time for Q&A at the end. So I think that is it. So Sarah, if you can go ahead and move this on. And then here's just opening remarks from our author, Assembly Member Alex Lee.
If anyone can't hear anything, just let me know and we'll make sure that the volume's right and everything.
Hi everyone, my name is Assembly Member Alex Lee, and I have the great honor of representing the 25th Assembly District, which includes parts of Alameda County as well as Santa Clara County. While I wish I could be here today to talk about and participate in the town hall, I'm right now probably in a very long Assembly Public Safety Committee hearing right now, where we're debating a lot of really, really important bills that relate to reimagining and reforming our very obviously imperfect criminal justice system. But today we're talking about Assembly Bill 1509, the Anti-Racism Sentencing Reform Act, which corrects a long-standing injustice and is a relic of institutionalized racism in the criminal system, in the criminal legal system. Extreme sentencing enhancements have fueled mass incarceration for decades without deterring crime or making us any safer. Under the current law, nearly 9 out of 10 people who have gun enhancements in the prison population are people of color. That is completely unacceptable. We can hold people accountable for causing harm without using sentencing enhancements that add an extra 10, 20, or 25 to life on top of someone else's conviction. Sentence enhancements serve no meaningful deterrence purpose. Effective deterrence looks like keeping guns out of people's hands, not sentencing someone to an extra quarter century once the harm has already occurred. Tough on crime era laws like this were passed with zero data or evidence that gives someone an extreme sentence was the best way to protect public safety. It's clear this law is a complete failure. The extra time added by sentence enhancements is incredibly costly. On average, it costs $81,000 to incarcerate someone for just 1 year. And with the 40,000 people serving time for gun enhancements, the financial cost and impact is huge. It is important that we pass retroactive legislation so that those who are currently serving time for gun enhancements, which are an add-on to the statutory sentence, are able to be resentenced and come home. Because we know the key to addressing safety in our communities is not locking people up and throwing the key away, or really throwing away a life. It's really rehabilitation and reinvesting in people's life outcomes. And what we have to do with this bill, AB 1509, is really undoing the decades, if not more, of harm that we have really just penalized people without really figuring out the greater community safety. So again, thank you so much for all being at the town hall today. Wish I could be there with you all, but looking forward to working with you all very, very soon. Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that message with us, Sarah. So now I say we just hop right into it and go through an overview of what AB 1509 would actually do. And to kick us off, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Leah Gillis with Restore Justice.
Thank you. So I'm going to start out by just explaining to you what a sentencing enhancement is and specifically what gun enhancements are. When a district attorney decides how to charge a case, what they will do is go through all of the facts of the case, look at all of the incidents that an individual may have participated in, and select what crimes they believe that they committed. They will then charge all of those crimes. The time that a person could spend in custody because of that could range from 1 year in county jail for certain felonies, all the way through to life sentences. In the state of California, we have penalized every type of crime you can imagine, whether it's committed with a firearm, without a firearm, whether the firearm was used, and whether or not great bodily injury was caused by that. And so that will be the first layer of what a district attorney does. The second layer will be then for them to decide if they are going to add enhancements. What enhancements do is they stack punishment above and beyond what has already been accused for somebody. So in this instance, the gun enhancements that we have targeted penalize duplicate conduct that somebody has already been accused of. So specifically, the big one is 12022.53, which adds on 10, 20, or 25 years to life. Many times these enhancements can double, triple, or even get as high as 5 times the sentence as the underlying offenses. So what we see then is a person is dramatically over penalized potentially for the same conduct that they're initially charged with. This has no top, so there is no height in which these enhancements can't reach. I currently represent clients who have over 150 years to life, up to 350 years to life, only because of these enhancements. You can get to a life sentence without that. Obviously, there are plenty of offenses in our state that allow it to do that. But what gun enhancements do, in essence, is just really create an extreme sentencing situation for that individual to face or to defend against. The gun sentencing enhancements are also the most commonly used. As Assemblymember Lee said in his opening remarks, This is overwhelmingly applied to people of color. 89 or 98% of the people in custody right now that have sentencing enhancements are people of color. Obviously, that is unconscionable and not tied to any statistically appropriate fact. It is just how it is being applied. There are currently 40,000 individuals in custody serving sentences, but when you take a look at who is being impacted, that does not take into consideration all of the families that are currently in a position of somebody not having yet been convicted. So that number is dramatically lower than what we're actually, the impact that this bill would have. And I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. And I'm going to pass it to Adnan to take us through the next couple of slides.
Great. Can we go, well, I know you mentioned that, Leah mentioned, can we go back to the previous slide with the graph right there? And I think this says a lot, right? So the reason we named it, or it's named the Anti-Racism Sentencing Reform Act, is exactly this. Altogether, 89% of people are basically not white. So 11% of people that do get the gun enhancement charge are white, 11%. That's not to say that white people don't use guns. That's to say that this system here in California with this law specifically gives this extra 10, extra 20, extra 25 years to life to primarily, you see here, what these are CDCR numbers, the California Department of Corrections numbers, 45% that are doing time right now out of the 40,000 are Latinx, 36% people are Black, 8% are what they consider other, but it's like Asian, Indigenous people. So that means that they are, like Leah mentioned, are doing extra 10 years, extra 20, or an extra 25 to life, stacking of charges. Next slide. So I said it earlier that this law started, was actually introduced and passed in 1997. And this is during the tough on crime era. Tough on crime era basically said, oh, there's too much crime happening, that we need to give more sentences. But sadly, after a lot of people went through this, I myself was incarcerated. I spent 16 years inside. And after some research, a decade or so after the tough on crime era, which is still going on, by the way, we're just trying to undo it now a little bit at a time. It was found out that laws had no significant impact on crime rates or the reduction of any crimes. So having a sentencing law or increasing the severity of a punishment does little or nothing to deter crime, right? So for example, we have the death penalty in California. We have life without parole in California. We have 25 to life. We have this gun enhancement, gang and all sorts of laws and legislation and extreme and just sentences. None of that is stopping violence in the street right now. So for example, another example is in the, is there are people saying that the shootings and violent crime are rising. Well, this law has been around since 1997. So clearly nothing has changed out here in the community, out here in the streets. This law has not deterred anything. I know this says this is a Black feminist bill and would have a significant impact on gender-based inequality in California. This also paves the way for an era of prison closure. Think about 40,000 people who are affected by this bill. And we do aim for this bill to be retroactive. That's something the co-sponsors, SC Justice Group, Initiate Justice, Silicon Valley Debug, and Restore Justice, the 4 organizations who are sponsoring this bill, we are not budging on retroactivity. I would not be home today if the bill, Senate Bill 1437, the felony murder rule, was not retroactive. I would still be in prison doing a life sentence. So believe me, I understand the importance of retroactivity. Next slide. I can go through this, but Taina, do you mind going over this part? I did have some other talking points, but I can return to them later.
Sure, I'm happy to do this. And I know that I want to make sure that Felicia has the opportunity to share as well. So in terms of where we are for AB 1509, all of y'all are probably familiar with the fact that it is a lot of work to get these bills passed, especially a bill like AB 1509, which would be so sweeping since it would affect, roughly around 40% of all people who are incarcerated right now, and because it would be retroactive. So it's a long path and it's going to be a heavy lift. So where we are in the process right now is we're waiting to go to the Assembly Public Safety Committee. It's an assembly bill, so it has to start the process in that house. We are anticipating that our hearing is coming up either Tuesday, April 20th or the 27th, and we will make sure that all of us are posting updates so that you all are aware when that hearing does happen so that you can watch. The next step is it will go to the Assembly Appropriations Committee, which is where they will determine whether or not this is something they want to fund the implementation of, especially around resentencing. Costs might be a concern. So we have to make sure that when we're doing our advocacy, we are very strong on the point that it's really important regardless of what the cost is. And then if it clears the Appropriations Committee, it will go to the entire Assembly floor for a vote, and then it'll repeat the process in the Senate. It'll go to the Senate Public Safety Committee, the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senate floor vote. And if at any point it is amended in the Senate, then it will return to the Assembly floor for a quick concurrence vote, which just basically means, yeah, we still agree with this. And then if it clears both houses, it will make it to the governor's desk for signature. So keep in mind that this entire process will be between now and roughly September or October. And that is assuming that the bill makes through the legislature this year. It's also possible that this could be a 2-year bill and we, carry on some of these steps next year as well. So we will be sure to keep everybody updated in every part of the process for how you can be involved. But yeah, it's going to be a little while. And I'm not sure if we were missing a slide or something like that, but I know Felicia, I wanted to give you the opportunity to share why this bill is important as well.
For sure. Yeah. And I know some folks already talked about this. And I know it seems like a lot of folks that are joining us today don't need a whole lot of convincing as to why this bill is so important. But I wanted to just touch on 3 different areas. And obviously there's many reasons why this bill is so important for us right now at this time. The first is that this bill is actively trying to tear down the tools of mass incarceration and white supremacy, right? And this is the fact that we know that sentence enhancements are a tool to keep Black and brown communities incarcerated for longer periods of time and are a key driver of mass incarceration, not only in California, but across the country. And I know many folks have already mentioned this already, but we know that 89% of people that are incarcerated under a gun enhancement are people of color, right? So we know who sentence enhancements are really targeting and going after. We also know that sentence enhancements are purposely incomprehensible and inherently racist. And we see this in our SC Justice Group's own membership, where many of our membership are deeply impacted by sentence enhancements. And the fact is that a lot of our membership doesn't know how their loved one received that enhancement or how many years their loved one is actually serving under specific types of enhancements. And Miss Alice will speak a little bit more about this in the panel in her personal experiences. But this incomprehensibility is an injustice in and of itself, because of course, families of incarcerated people don't understand their sentences because we aren't supposed to. And that system is working exactly as it was designed to, which is to keep Black and brown people incarcerated for longer periods of time. A second piece is I want to uplift the gender implications of AB 1509, which is this bill is a Black feminist bill. And because it tackles racism, but it would also have significant impacts on gender-based inequality. We know that having an incarcerated loved one wreaks havoc on women and families' economic well-being. So when a person is incarcerated for a longer period of time, for example, under a gun enhancement, this means that women are working longer hours, having to get a different job or multiple jobs to make ends meet, or turning down educational opportunities to be able to support their families. And we know the implications of race and gender are clear. If Black and brown people are disproportionately incarcerated for longer periods of time, then the emotional, mental health, and financial toll goes on for much, much longer. Interrupting mass incarceration interrupts the economic inequality experienced by women, and this is exactly what AB 1509 would do. And the last piece I want to lift up around just why this bill is so important right now is that we really see it as paving a way for an era of prison closures in California. We know that the 40,000 people right now in California that are currently serving under gun enhancements could potentially be eligible for release under the retroactivity piece of AB 1509. And if that is the case, if we're able to release large amounts of people, that means that the prison population in California could drastically be reduced, meaning that it might be possible to close more than 2 prisons already slated for closure in California over the next several years. AB 1509 is absolutely essential for all the reasons I lifted out and for all the reasons you'll continue to hear from, and as well as from our panel of folks. But I just wanted to uplift those 3 key pieces of why we find this bill so important, especially at this moment in California. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Taina.
Thanks so much, Felicia. All right, so I am really excited to actually pass this to our panelists. And before we get started, before I pass it to our panelists, I'm going to take a little bit of time to introduce them. First, we are going to hear from Jasper Stallings, who is currently incarcerated and has a gun enhancement. We'll be playing an interview that he recorded with Initiate Justice Policy Manager Greg and Jasper, where he will introduce himself and share about his experience with gun enhancements. Then we will hear from Miss Alice Coleman, who has been advocating for incarcerated people, as well as the families of those suffering from the ravages of incarceration for many years, both for SC Justice Group as well as her family and community. Her husband is currently incarcerated and has a gun enhancement. And then we will hear from Xavier Espana, who is a community member with Silicon Valley Debug. He's recently home after serving more than 8 years inside, the majority of which was served on gun enhancement time. So that being said, we are going to play the recording from Jasper.
I'm here with Mr. Jasper Stallings, an Initiate Justice Inside Organizer. Can you please introduce yourself for a moment?
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mr. Jasper Stallings. I am 39 years old, presently incarcerated at the Valley State Prison in Chowchilla. I have been sentenced to 127 years to life in prison, and 70 plus of those years are due to gun enhancement. You know, I got arrested in 2009. My sentence was 127 years. There's no possible way I can do that much time, and the majority of the time is from gun enhancements. And I see a number of people here who have lesser charges that have more time with enhancements than they do with the actual charge. And, you know, I see it every day. And I hope that there's a way that we can kind of fix that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Stallings. And, you know, one of the ways we can do that this year is by passing Assembly Bill 1509 with Alex Lee. This Assembly Member Alex Lee, this bill will reduce the 10-20 life gun enhancement down to 1, 2, 3 years and allow for resentencing. So, Mr. Stallings, if you could speak directly with the politicians who are going to be voting on this bill, what would you tell them, and how would you advocate for your own freedom?
I'll tell them that the gun enhancements doesn't necessarily fight the crime. You know, the gun enhancements is a way to get people like myself, I'm a Black man, more time away from our families. You know, I understand there's punishment in the system, and then we all need to understand that there's punishment in the system. However, giving me and other people additional time for the crime and then hold that over our heads for an abundant of time, it's like we just lose our family. We make a mistake and we just lose our family with over enhancements. Like enhancement on each and everything does not solve the problem. You know, like right now, rehabilitation works. It works for me, and it's working for me. And if there's, you know, enhancements on programs, enhancements on education, enhancements on community resources, you know, enhancements on educating the youth so the crimes and the guns that are being easily and readily available are not as accessible. Those are the things that we need to pay attention to. However, there's an influx of guns in the community, especially the community of color. Why is there an influx on poverty in these communities that people feel the need to not just have a right to bear arms, but a right to just protect yourself walking to the grocery store, from people who are hungry and poverty. And it's an endless, what do you do? And the thing that we can do is build the community up, have people that have made the mistakes come back and integrate into the streets and show them this is not the way. There's a better way to do this. And to keep us that has done a crime, that has got multiple enhancements, like I have a gun enhancement on every charge, which gave me 70 years of gun enhancements for one gun, one shot. Out of the gun got 70 additional years. I'm not saying anything that is like, okay, it's not justifiable, but at the same time, I know that learning from your mistakes and the enhancements, those two, it would be better if it can go hand in hand where they enhance like the programs, enhance people who come to the community and talk to the people, enhance even the smallest things is like gardens and grocery stores. These type of things need to be enhanced in the community, not punishment, not 10, 25 years for gun enhancement when the crime only entails 6 or 7 years. Even then, a crime that takes 7 years out of your life with an additional 10 years out of your life, on top of the other things that seems to be coming up in the courthouse, it's like you make a mistake and you're thrown away. I don't think that's how humans in our society should be. We should be able to see that people make mistakes, and we see it on the news every day. People make mistakes, and I hope that things have come to a change. It seems like it's getting better.
All right. I don't know how that was for folks. So if you need to take a minute to breathe, sometimes it can be triggering and kind of difficult to listen to somebody's direct experience while they're still going through that. It's hard to hear about a sentence like that. So we thank Jasper for sharing his story with us. And thanks to you all for listening. And if you need to take a minute, turn off your screen, step away, do whatever you need to do. Want to make space for that. But something else that Jasper touched on, and watching so many folks share their experiences and their loved ones' experiences here in the chat, these sentencing enhancements don't just impact the people who are incarcerated. It also impacts their family members and their community on the outside. So Miss Alice, hello. Yeah, I couldn't find you in the thing, so feel free to unmute yourself. But Miss Alice, I have a question for you that I'm hoping you can, take a couple of minutes to talk to us about. Can you tell us how fighting for your incarcerated loved one with a sentence enhancement has impacted you and your family, and how AB 1509 would change the conditions for you and for your incarcerated loved one?
Of course, thank you. And I'm honored to be here this evening. Thank you for this platform. Now, I'm a little nervous, so y'all bear with me. So in 1995, my husband was sentenced with an astronomical amount of time, totaling 200 years, of which a total of 150 years were enhancements that included both gang as well as firearms. I'm uncertain as to how many years are gang enhancements and how many years are for the use of a firearm during the commission of a crime, because he was now a 3-striker. And as Felicia shared with us earlier, the system is geared are set up, whereas they don't want us to know because they want to keep us in confusion. For my husband, these sentence enhancements took away every form of hope that he would ever see the outside again, up until recent years when the parole board started releasing lifers and Prop 57 was passed by the California voters. And it was then that I finally saw a glimmer of hope from him. For me, these enhancements are like a mini 3 strikes law designed to keep minorities in prison for as long as possible. I also view these sentencing enhancements along with the 3 strikes law as a contributing factor, if not the chief cause to mass incarceration. The way the system is set up, it's like being Black is a crime. And as an African-American woman with an African-American incarcerated husband, these enhancements are extremely harsh, especially because they are at the discretion of people who have never been affected by incarceration. Now our family is forced to live with the possibility that incarceration is just a way of life for us. I'm tired and I'm exhausted from assuming the lead role in my marriage, as well as sometimes feeling like a single parent. And it can become very overwhelming from time to time. And this bill would truly mitigate weariness on so many levels. It could give him a dock hearing before 10/20/24, which is what is currently scheduled for. It could get him a parole hearing sooner than 10/20/29, as it is currently scheduled for, and just perhaps bring him home in the very near future. My husband has been medically diagnosed as legally blind.
It's okay, Miss Alice.
I got it. Okay. In what he's been medically diagnosed as legally blind in one eye and is slowly losing sight in the other eye. But that doesn't stop his drive and his zeal as he attempts to be that beacon of light to those young men who are coming in fresh from court cases or that have been incarcerated in the county jail. I can see him making even a greater impact in the lives of those that are currently at the threshold of incarceration when he is released. I asked my husband last night if this bill were to pass, what would it mean to him? And he said it would give him hope. So in closing, the Coleman family, we wholeheartedly support AB 1509 because it interrupts the moral fabric of unequal punishment as well as judicial vengeance. And it's also a form of redemption that says debt paid in full. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Alice. And I know we're all muted, but if y'all could send Miss Alice some love in the chat, throw up some clapping hands and your reactions for her. It's incredibly hard to be vulnerable and to share your story. But the fact is we only change these laws when we have the courage to share our stories and talk about how these racist laws have impacted us and our family. So thank you for your courage, Miss Alice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I want to pass it over to Xavier Espana, who is also directly impacted by these gun enhancements. So Xavier, if you wouldn't mind telling us what you think is the most common public misconceptions around gun enhancements and why ending gun enhancements is central to the advocacy that you're doing right now. Oh, and you are still muted. Yep, there you go.
Okay. I would say the most common misconception is that, yeah, like that enhancements would decrease crime or a certain type of crime, or you know what I'm saying? Like, but it really doesn't, because it's like back to that pie chart where mostly Black and Latins were getting the enhancement. Me being incarcerated, I seen that was true because me hanging around, well, like with my kind, was a lot of communication. I will notice a lot of them were doing base crimes, but the enhancements had more time added on than the base crime. So a base crime could have been either 2 or 3 years, but the enhancement adds on 5 or 7. So if they already did the time for the crime, but they're really just waiting for enhancement, that's just holding them back, and it's 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 very sad to see, and it's true. Like, um, it's like, um, I would say it's it's kind of like, I would say it's more inhumane. Like, I would say instead of like people in the judicial system trying to enhance people of urban background, black, brown, Asian, like, instead of just trying to look at people as numbers and black and white, like, just try to have a little bit more of a human heart, and instead of an enhancement, a de-enhancement, look at people like from race, age, financial background. Like, a lot of people, just are raised in a certain way and are exposed to certain things. So if you add time to that and leave them in an environment where they're just surrounded with people that are in a criminal thinking, like, what do you expect them to come out of? Like, you're adding more time and taking away from their opportunities, like when they parole. Like, for me, I paroled when I was 27. Imagine if you added another enhancement, I parole when I'm 30, 35. Like, what am I gonna come out to? Like, I'm just gonna know what I learned in there. Like, luckily I came out, I still have a good amount of my youth left, and I could learn, it's just, so that's what I would say. Like, the misconception is like gun enhancements do not work, like, at all. Like, it's just, I'll say it's more of a gimmick to add on time than to try to decrease crime in today's society.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I don't mind. I hope you don't mind, like, me putting you on the spot a little bit, but I'm wondering, if in addition to the misconceptions, if there's anything else that you wanted to share with the group about, how the gun enhancements have impacted you, or, how the passage, or, what the passage of AB 1509 would mean to you.
Yeah, because it's like, with me, the gun enhancement is, I got a gun enhancement not for me having a gun, but for my co-defendant having a gun. So I got charged. It was a gun enhancement for my co-defendant being armed, which is like, just like I said, it just seems like a gimmick just to add on time to a crime that was already, you know what I'm saying? It's like, if a crime is gonna be penalized for a certain amount, don't add on time for, like, saying, that's like, it's like saying, like, okay, somebody stole a pack of gum, you know, hypothetically, and then but you're gonna add on time because they stole that pack of gum while wearing black shoes. Like, it's that's just like, and plus it is confusing because when I was offered the deal, like, I was offered the deal a day in advance, and honestly, I didn't really get a chance to really think about it, and I really didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. Like, like, people ask me, like, how did it, like, how does it break down? Like, how much time did he get? Like, I still don't get it, but like I said, it's just, I don't think it's working. Like, it's just a gimmick.
For sure. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and I'm sorry that that happened to you. I'm glad that you're home now, and doing good work in the community. Thank you for being here and doing the good work to help us end this, so that other folks don't have to go through that in the future. I had also shared in the chat that my loved one was sentenced to 10 years for a gun enhancement for a BB gun that his co-defendant had. So it wasn't even a real gun, and it wasn't even shown. It wasn't, brandished or anything. He just had a BB gun on him, and my loved one was sentenced to 10 years for that, and his two co-defendants were sentenced to 12 years because of gun enhancement. So this is a law that makes absolutely no sense, is 1,000% racist, and is something that we are planning on ending in 2021. So I know, Sarah, if you can put your screen back up, and then I'm going to pass it to Adnan, who's going to share with us the important questions that I'm hoping everybody here is asking themselves right now, like, what is it that we can do to help pass AB 1509? So I'm going to pass it back to you, Adnan.
Thank you, Taina, and thank you for everybody who shared. It was emotional. I'm sitting here just shaking my head, and I think it just, even though I know this needs to pass, just hearing a few of those stories, even yours just now, Taina, like I think put more energy into me. And so I want to first of all ground everybody by saying there's hope in this bill, there's momentum, but also anytime that there's a mass shooting, anytime that there's any gun violence, that will be used against this bill, and it already has. And so we have to, the first thing we do is raise awareness about AB 1509, but we also should internalize and learn all the counter arguments that we want to let people know. And the reason why we want to let as many people know in California is so that their legislators who represent their districts can understand that people in their district or their constituents want this bill passed. So one thing we want to say is that mass shooters are not going to necessarily hit the gun enhancement bill, right? The law. Mass shooters that have multiple bodies, sadly, will, in California, people will probably seek the death penalty against them. And that in itself is sad. But that's not what gun enhancements, as we all know, are for. This law, like I said, has been around for over 2 decades almost now. It has not stopped gun violence or mass shootings. Those are type of counter arguments that we want to say is that it doesn't affect sentencing laws do not prevent crime. So we have a social media toolkit. I'm gonna put it in the chat here. I'm not sure if you can click on that or not, but if someone can help me put it in there. The toolkit has those counter arguments. The toolkit has those things that you can tweet about, you can post about on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, social media. You can share this toolkit with your neighbors, your family members, people around you. That's what we want to do. We need to make this popular in the sense that we need to let people know that, and people, what I mean is the legislators, that we want this bill passed. Another thing that I will encourage everybody here is look at your zip code. Where do you live? And who are your state senators? Who is your state senator? And who is your state assembly member? That's very important for you to know. So I would say Google who if you don't know, who your representative is. So again, a state senator and your state assembly member, because you are their constituent. They care about what you think because you vote for them or don't vote for them or campaign against the person that may go against them next time that their seat is up. So that's very, very, like I said, important. Make sure you know who your state senator and your state assembly member is. Or Taina just posted in the chat about how to find your representative. Then one thing you can do is, it's in the toolkit, is submit an organizational, if you're a part of an organization, to submit a letter. Or you can submit an individual letter, meaning this is coming from you, the person, the individual. They're both great. Organizational letters can also be very helpful because it shows a letter from a group of people or a mass amount of people. So if you know anybody that is part of an organization, if you are part of an organization, any organization, it doesn't have to be quote unquote criminal justice organization. It could be the teachers association. It could be the farm workers. It could be, and that's actually better because it's a diverse support on this bill. It could be people who are for climate justice. It doesn't matter. If they support this bill, they can submit an organizational letter. It's in the toolkit. And again, you can submit an individual support letter, which is also in the toolkit, meaning that it's coming specifically from you. Another thing that you could do is make call to legislators. They can call to your assembly member, call to your, for now, the assembly member, because right now this is on the assembly side of the legislature. Another thing you can do is there are 8 people who sit on the Public Safety Committee. This is the bill, this is where we need to get past first. The Public Safety Committee, there are 8 people on there. Let me see if I could put it in the chat who the people are. If you guys can.
I put the link in the chat.
Oh, you did? Great. And so you can make calls to them. Those 8 people, we need 4 votes to get past this stage. We need 4 votes to get past the Public Safety Committee. The Public Safety Committee date for our bill, for AB 1509, is not set yet, but they're tossing around two options, April 20th or April 27th. So that day, for that public safety hearing, those 8 legislators will hear about this bill and then make a decision if they want to put it through to the next phase of the bill. So first and foremost, we have to get it past public safety. So I would say to call, it says here to call your assembly member and the Assembly Public Safety Committee members, that's also in the chat, and ask them to please vote yes on AB 1509. And then you can also do a call in to do a Me Too. So the day that whether it's going to be on the 20th or whether it's going to be on the 27th, you can also call in and say, after the hearing, you can also say that I support this bill. We'll send out, follow us on social media, or we'll continue to send out all updates and where you can call in and submit your Me Too's. The last thing I do see in the chat are, can incarcerated people submit letters? Yes. So Taina, I'm not sure if, or Felicia, if you have information from your orgs, but from our org, we've already sent about 1,000 toolkits that we've created for currently incarcerated people. It's pretty much the same thing as this toolkit you're probably going through now, just some minor adjustments for a currently incarcerated audience. I'm gonna try to find that and try to put it in the chat. Oh, I just see it's in the chat now. And I think Taina and Felicia, I'm not sure if I think your mailing list has went in already, but I think you guys did like 10,000 or something like that has already went in, correct?
We sent in probably more than that actually, but I'm not sure how many letters we've received yet. Sarah might know. Sarah, if you have a sense of how many letters we've received, but I think it's been like a couple thousand, at least from folks inside.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number. I just have an imagery in my head of Greg's desk filling up with lots and lots of mail. And he's technically off today, so I don't want to bother him with any specific numbers, but I know that it's a good chunk and we have more coming in.
So the toolkits have been sent in, like I said, so we're just waiting on the responses. I will say this, that I'm not sure, for me and my colleagues and my other formerly incarcerated friends and family members, there's a lot of buzz going around with this bill. I mean, it makes sense, right? 40,000 people, that's 40% of California state prison population have 10, 20, or 25 to life extra on their sentence. I have a small correction. That public safety committee hearing, we don't need 4, we need 5 votes out of the 8 assembly members that sit on that committee. So we need 5 votes, 5 of them to say, yes, let this bill pass to the next phase. All right, so make sure, again, you call your legislators, call the public safety committee members, submit an organization letter, find other organizations to submit letters, submit an individual letter if you can. And then after that, just continue to, as much as you can, raise awareness. From now on, I'm gonna close off by just saying this, that let's just put on like our teacher/educator hat. And that's what I think we have to do, is just educate people about all these talking points, what this bill does, continue to separate the mass shootings, the gun violence, because that does not change, this gun law does not change what's happening out in the streets. So I'm gonna stop with that. I just wanna say thank you to everyone, my colleagues here, people who shared, and everyone, the 157, 50-some people that showed up today. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Adnan. And before you sign off, I saw that there was a question around who should incarcerated people address their support letters to. So could you speak to that?
Yeah, so it is going to, it's kind of the same thing as an individual letter. I know that one thing that we have said is submit an individual letter. It'll come to either Initiate Justice or our orgs as co-sponsors, and then we'll submit it into the right portals or where they belong. And I think there's also a second step, which is to submit to the specific legislators themselves, but we have been told to hold off on specifically currently incarcerated people writing to legislators. You can write to, in the toolkit for currently incarcerated people, there is an address where people can write to, and then we will receive them and then we'll distribute them accordingly. But I will say too, we can all be creative, right? I know we have a bunch of people in here who I've seen in the chat say that I know, my loved one has this amount of time for gun enhancement, or 10 here or 20 here, they didn't get caught with a gun. Well, you all with your loved one can advocate together and team up together. Who is your legislator? Who is your state senator, assembly member, the public safety committee? How can you two together whether if they write something that's a letter, or they write a quote for you to read to someone, that this is a quote specific directly from my loved one, a quick little soundbite, just like you heard earlier with Jasper. Those are different creative ways that you can team up with your loved one to advocate collectively.
Thank you so much, Adnan. And I've been seeing a couple of questions pop up in the chat, and I'm going to do my best to synthesize. I can't say that word. Synthesize them. But here's one that was just brought to my attention. So anybody, on the panel, feel free to chime in on this. But the question is, who are the major opponents of this bill, and what are their arguments, and how do we answer them?
I mean, I'll just say that we all know who the opponents will be, right? Police, DAs, white supremacists. They'll be just like they. What was that?
Tough on crime groups.
Tough on crime groups, yes. They will be opposed. So we've had technically 2 oppositions, and it's the NRA. And just so people know here, like the politics with that, when there's people who are about gun safety and gun control, they don't like the NRA. NRA has been against gun control and gun safety. And I'm not talking about sentencing enhancements. I'm talking about access to firearms, background checks, and so on and so forth, that part of gun control. So kind of sort of like, that's not a bad thing that they wrote a letter of opposition to this bill. So far, those have been the main 2 that I'm aware of.
Does anybody else?
I would also just flag that the toolkit has, this toolkit is amazing, and Restore Justice did like an incredible job on this, but there is actually a section in there that goes through like the opposition's arguments and specific talking points that we can use to counter those. I won't go through them all right now, but encourage folks to check out that toolkit and scroll down there, especially as if you're having this conversation with family, your friends, people in your community, right? And these arguments come up, to use those counter talking points as they come up.
Yes, thank you, Felicia. And I'm seeing a couple of questions in the chat around who AB 1509 would apply to. And Leah, I saw that you replied in the chat, but do you mind sharing a little bit out loud for everyone to hear who would be affected by this bill if it passes?
Right. So we have spent most of the time discussing the most egregious gun enhancement, which is the 10, 20, and 25 to life, but there are many. We have targeted every single gun enhancement in the state of California. So all but 2 will be completely eradicated. If your loved one has a gun enhancement that is not one of the most dramatic ones, their gun enhancement will be completely wiped away. And for those that have the big one, the maximum they could serve is 3 years. So they would file a petition. So the short answer is, if they have a gun enhancement, it applies. End of story to everyone. There is another question I wanted to answer quickly, asking for the distinguishing difference between AB 81 and 1509. AB 81 gives a court discretion within sentencing to strike an enhancement. This is really important. That is only helpful for people who take the huge risk to go to trial. If you enter into a plea agreement because your case as charged is so coercive that it would be illogical for you to go to trial and lose, getting 150, 200 years to life, and you decide to plead to say 50 years outright, the court has no discretion to strike your enhancement at that time, at that sentencing. So without 1509, the courts, if you enter in an agreed upon plea agreement, the court cannot disrupt that and will not generally disrupt that. Oftentimes when they do, it's because they think the time's not enough, not because they think that it's too much. What 1509 will do then is recall those sentences and give the court not the discretion, the requirement. This will not be for a court to decide whether they think that your loved one is eligible. It will be mandated. These enhancements will be stricken, and it will not be a discretionary option for a court, which is huge for our loved one.
Thank you, Leah. And we only have 2 minutes left. And I saw a couple of similar questions pop up. So Leah, would you mind just like quickly speaking to potentially what resentencing could look like when we pass AB 1509?
Right. So one of the things that we have seen in other propositions is fighting from the DAs pushing back on this. And what they have asked the courts to do at times is to say, okay, fine, you get rid of this, but I want you to revive a charge that we dismissed. So we were very aggressive with the language of the law. And what it does is it does not allow a court to do that. What resentencing would do is they file a petition, then their case goes in front of the court and the court strikes the sentencing enhancement and then is not allowed to amend the charges in any other way. So what does that mean? It cannot get worse and it cannot stay the same. It can only get better for your loved ones. They will then potentially be releasable if they have served their sentence. If they still have a life sentence that's independent of the gun enhancement, then they would have to serve that and go through the parole board. And if they have served their sentence, then they would be released.
Thank you so much, Leah. So we're just about at time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you so much to Adnan, Felicia, Miss
Aina, can I say one last thing? I'm so sorry. One last thing. I know 30 seconds, maybe less than that. I just want to give a quick shout out to Assemblymember Alex Lee, who's the main author on this bill. And just to be transparent with everyone here, when Initiate Justice and Restore approached us all with this bill, we couldn't get an author. We couldn't get a legislator to put their name on it. And we were kind of scared about it, that this may not even be introduced this year. And here comes a brand new assembly member elected this cycle, like just was elected, and puts his name on this type of bill, this type of quote unquote controversial bill. So major shout out to Assemblymember Alex Lee, who's the main author, represents San Jose, Milpitas area. Then we have 4 co-authors that I also want to say they added their names on the bill, legislators. Senator Scott Wiener from the San Francisco, San Mateo area, Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo, Northeastern LA and East LA, Assemblymember Ash Kalra, East San Jose area, and Assemblymember Mark Stone, Santa Cruz, Monterey area. Big shout out to them for putting their names and possibly their careers on this bill. So thank you so much. And thanks, Taina, for giving me that quick second.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adnan, for uplifting it. I mean, because it's true. In addition to us like pushing legislators to vote on things, it's also important for us to thank them when they do the right thing. They need some positive reinforcement from time to time. So again, thank you so much to our panelists, especially to Miss Alice, Xavier, and Jasper, although he's not here in person, for sharing your personal stories. Thank you to everybody in the chat who shared your stories and the stories of your loved ones. Gun enhancements have been ravaging our communities for far too long. So shout out to all of the organizers and impacted people, legislators who have been working hard on this. I believe that in 2021, we will repeal gun enhancements. We will repeal this racist law, and we will continue to fight together. So please do check out the amazing toolkit, the Restore Justice put together. Follow SC Justice Group, Silicon Valley Debug, Restore Justice, Initiate Justice, Assemblymember Alex Lee on social media to keep up with the updates. And yeah, please stay involved, y'all. We're in this together and we're gonna win. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.